This is Connie Kubiak, and today I am interviewing Dr. Vivian Porter-Huto on July 7, 2015. Dr. Porter, can you tell me where and when you received your credentials and where you currently work?
Well, currently I'm retired. My name at the time was Vivian S. Martin, and my registration number was number 272. I received it on December the 3rd, 1972, and I worked at Vassar Brothers Hospital in Poughkeepsie, New York. I'm currently retired from St. Joseph's Hospital after 19 years. That was in Tampa, Florida.
What drew you to EEG and neurodiagnostics?
I had been in retail as a buyer for girls and teenage clothing at Sears Roebuck for many years and got sick and had to leave. But anyway, I was hired as an EKG technician at Norfolk General Hospital in August 1964. At that time, EKG and EEG were together. After about a year, when I wasn't real busy, I would go watch the EEG tech do EEGs, and I became very interested in it. So I decided, well, if they ever had an opening, I wanted to be in that department. So sure enough, an opening came up, and I was on the job trained at the time, and I wanted to become a registered technologist. I'd heard about it, and I thought, well, if there's a registry, I'm going to get it. So I started going to Old Dominion College at night to learn electronics, and I went a full year, 2 nights per week. At that time, in 1965, there were no training schools. It was all on-the-job training, and also we used only needle electrodes at Norfolk General Hospital.
Was this a popular specialty when you were starting your career?
Yes, it was. We had a lot of neurologists and cardiologists that worked together hand in hand. And so we did a lot. I worked every day. I would do 5 to 6 EEGs, sometimes more. And we were connected with the Children's Hospital as well in Norfolk. So I worked there 6 years.
Who were your early mentors?
Well, actually, my boss, Jean Bates, who trained me, I don't think she may have gotten registered. You'd have to look it up, Connie. I have no idea if she ever did or not. She was the one that taught me how to do that. And Faye Tyner was a very important influence in my life because I started going to the Southern EEG meetings as much as I could. I tried to go to every one. And of course, as you well know, I eventually became president of that Southern EEG Society, as well as Florida.
What were your earliest career influences?
Well, I loved working with the patients, and to me it was so intriguing. I was so excited about learning about the brain. So I started anatomy and physiology training on my own. I'd get everything I could to read about it, and I was sort of self-taught. And I decided I would take a course from the University of California in neuroscience, which I did. And I took that, finished it in 6 months, and the doctor, Dr. Bill Garut, who was the head of the neurology department at San Francisco, he told me that I was the only student that ever passed that test. Passed it in 6 months. It took most of them, he said, 2 years or more. But I was determined that I was going to pass. And after I finished that course, I took the test and passed it and became an EEG technologist, registered. That was my goal all along.
If you had not become an EEG technologist, what would you have liked to have done?
I had thought about going into nursing, but nursing wasn't for me. I wanted to become a medical doctor. Graduated from college, State University of New York in Albany, with a BS in health science. I was too old to go to medical school, according to the medical director at Mount Sinai, and he recommended that I go through Grenada or Mexico, and then I could come back and intern or extern at Mount Sinai. Of course, I couldn't do it because I had 2 teenage kids. So I decided I'll become a doctor. I'll become a PhD instead. So that's what I did.
Why do you think this field took off when and how it did?
I'm thinking that the idea that you could pick up electrical activity from the brain and demonstrate it on moving paper and show seizures and brain tumors and blood clots and strokes, etc. I think that that was why it took off so much. And of course, the thing that bothered me so much about most general practitioners is that they would check everything else before they'd check the brain. And it really made the neurology people kind of mad because they should have known, if they knew about anything, that the brain controls everything in the human body. But they never bothered to check it.
What equipment did you train on, and what were the main limitations of it?
Well, it was a grass instrument. I think most of us had the grass machines at the time. The one I trained on was actually electric. It didn't have batteries. But in New York, I worked on a battery-operated one, if you can believe it. But the worst part about it is you could be doing a patient, and a tube would blow, and you would have to dismantle the machine and find the right tube and put it in, and then it would be, then you could go on with your testing. But sometimes it took a while. And if you didn't have the right tube, you had to discontinue the test till you got it.
What other equipment have you used over the years, and could you summarize the pros and cons of each?
Well, I can't really do that too much. I know I had a Beckman machine, and then eventually we got into brain mapping, and I can't remember the names of all of that equipment. I wish I could.
What memories do you have of your training program?
Oh, I love that training program. Meeting the kids, interviewing them, and then teaching them. I had to be prepared to step in when one of the physicians or nurses or somebody couldn't come in. Fortunately, I was able to hire a few registered EEG technologists that did an excellent job, and you were a product of that, Connie, I believe. And it was just a thrill to know the students, and they came from different parts of the country. And when I first started that program, it was just for charitable things, I guess. But we learned after the first year that if a student paid a little something to come to the program, we got a better group of students. So I convinced the hospital to let me do that, and they did. And so then we got a better clientele, better students, and they were just as determined as they could be to become registered technologists. And I started that program in 1977. I got it accredited in 77. It was reaccredited several different times.
What was the original name of the program when it first started?
Neuroscience. I said it was Neurodiagnostic Technologist, School of Electro-Neurodiagnostic Technologists, because we did more than just EEG. We started doing evoked potential, sleep studies, brain and spinal cord monitoring, and all the other things that were affiliated with it. We had the Sleep Lab and the Seizure Disorder Center and Memory Disorder Center and all different kinds of things under that department. And I had the PET scan, MRI, CAT scan, all of that, stereotactic radiosurgery, a whole bunch of other things that were under that Neuroscience Institute.
What are the main ways in which the field has changed over your career?
Well, I believe with the advent of the brain mapping and the sleep studies and working in surgery with the doctors and neurosurgeons, I think that helped expand the field of EEG technology. And then evoked potentials seem to help so much with the spinal cord surgery, and a lot of the techs and I learned how to do that in surgery. But when they replace the rods or put rods in the back of the patient.
How has scientific knowledge changed the field, and what do you think were the big breakthroughs?
Well, I think each year neuroscience has advanced. In fact, every time I pick up a magazine or newspaper and it says neuroscience, I immediately go there and look to see, what's been going on. I'll never forget the wonderful years I spent in the Neuroscience Institute, working with neurology and neurologists, neurosurgeons during that. And I think the new technology being introduced, and I wish I could still do research, is genetic and DNA and all that. Now, I don't know if they have instruments in EEG that can help with that or not. I don't know.
What are the 2 to 3 big issues in EEG that people are working on to solve today that you're aware of?
I'm really not aware of any of that stuff. I wish I could say, but I can't because I just don't know.
What are the main areas of professional discussion or disagreement today?
I don't know that either.
What are you most proud of in your professional life?
I think there's several things that I'm really proud of that I was able to accomplish. The number one thing was being a registered EEG technician because the same year that I received my bachelor's degree, I became a registered EEG tech. And I think between the two, I was more proud of being a registered EEG tech because I had worked so hard to get it because I had to do it all on my own. And once I passed that, I decided nobody in the Hudson Valley knew. There were 2 registered techs in the whole state of New York when I received my registry. So West Point would come and get me to do their death recordings. They had several during that period when I worked there. And another thing was starting the School of EEG Technology at St. Joseph's and getting it accredited because the only thing I had ever done before that with the curriculum was I taught cardiology at Dutchess Community College. And I knew I could put together a curriculum. So that's what I did. The next thing was being asked by the People's Republic of China to bring a delegation there from the field of neurology, which I did in 1985. There were 15 of us, and we were wined and dined by the neurologists in China all over. They took us to all of their major sites, and it was the most wonderful experience to be asked to do that. I was also asked to bring one to Russia, which I declined. I've done many things, and I think that being president of a lot of the EEG societies, I was president of the Southern Florida, and I was on the board of ASSET, and I can't remember what I did for that one. And I gave a lot of talks and different things. And that's one of the other things. I did a talk in San Francisco about carbon monoxide poisoning and its effect on the brain and the human body.
Where do you see neurodiagnostics in 10 years?
You know, truly, I have no idea. But I think with the expansion of neurosciences, that neurodiagnostics should linger and be around. I have no real knowledge of that, but I would think that would be the thing.
What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
The best piece of advice I ever received, if you do a job, do it to the very best of your ability. And this advice has stood me in good stead all the years of my life. I can't bear to do anything halfway. And I want to do it to the best of my ability. It may not always be the best, but at least I tried my best.
There you go. Is there anyone else in electroencephalography that you think would be beneficial to be talked to by us?
Well, I don't know if any of these people are still alive, but Dr. Lily Musella, which was one of your teachers, I think she's more than likely dead. And Dr. Eli Goldenson, who was the head neurologist at Columbia University, and then Dr. Bill Garut in San Francisco. I don't know if he's still alive or not. Haven't heard from him in years. And he started that neuroscience course out in California. In fact, I based my school curriculum on that because he gave me permission to use the materials for that as long as it was not sold. And of course I added to and changed a lot of it. And it had everything in it that you could pass the registry.
Who are the prominent electroencephalographers, living or deceased, who should be documented?
I have no idea. None of the ones I worked for, they're all dead. Is Faye Tyner still alive?
No.
And there used to be a girl, Mary Jo Martin, I think, that was in Augusta, Georgia. I don't know if she's still around or not.
Okay, I'm going to stop this and then we'll talk a little bit more, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.